All right, good morning. My name is Ellen Kokinda, and I'm going to open the staff hearing officer meeting for January 26, 2022. First, I'm going to start with preliminary matters, and A is requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of X agenda items. I do not have any to announce at this time. Moving on to announcements and appeals. I do not have any announcements this morning, and there are no appeals today. And then now I'm going to open up public comment for items not on today's agenda. So if you wish to speak on items not on today's agenda, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and we will be notified that you wish to speak. And I do not see anyone at this moment who has raised their hand. And Ms. Gu, could you confirm that we did not receive public comment for items not on today's agenda?
No, we have not received any public comment for X agenda items. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, closing public comment. So let's go to our first project, which is 2824 Serena Road. So this is a proposal for a new 104 square foot addition to the existing single unit residence. The project also includes 280 square feet of new deck, the conversion of the existing garage into a junior accessory dwelling unit, a new enclosed staircase, and a new one-car uncovered parking space. The discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer required for this project is an interior setback modification to allow alterations and encroachment into the northwestern interior setback. And just to note that the conversion of the garage to a junior accessory dwelling unit, the enclosed staircase, and the proposed uncovered parking space do not require discretionary approval by the staff hearing officer and are subject to standards of the city's ADU ordinance. So staff, and I think staff has determined that the project is categorically exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, section 15301, which allows for alterations and additions for existing facilities, and 15305, which is applicable to the requested zoning modification. So if I could have staff come on, we have Mr. Dostalik here. And I just want to make sure our project, the applicant is here as well. Mr. Dostalik, maybe we have April Palencia. Will Ms. Palencia be presenting today?
I believe that's the property owner. Jarrett Gorin, it was Vanguard Planning.
Oh, here we go. So I just saw Jarrett. Okay. Jarrett, give me a moment. We're promoting you to a panelist.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Okay. All right, so Robert, I'm going to please pass it off to you to give the staff presentation, and then Mr. Gorin, I will hand it over to you to follow up.
Great, thanks. Good morning, Ms. Kokinda and all. I'm Robert Dostalik, Associate Planner with the Community Development Department. And as noted, the project under jurisdiction of the Staff Hearing Officer is for an interior setback modification in association with the proposed 104 square foot addition. And as Ms. Kokinda already noted, the project also includes some other elements, including a 280 square feet of new deck, the conversion of the existing garage into a junior accessory dwelling unit, and a new one-car uncovered parking space. However, the latter described project elements are not subject to the discretionary approval today. And just to get our bearings, the project site is located at 2824 Serena Road in the Samarkand neighborhood of the city. And this is near the intersection of Vernon Road and Serena Road. And you can see the small vicinity map on the front cover sheet. And to dig into a little basic site information, the project site is zoned RS 7.5 with the Upper State Street USS overlay. And this is under Title 30 of the Municipal Code. The general plan land use designation is low density residential. The properties surrounding the project site are zoned for and developed with residential and commercial improvements. And if we could scroll to the site plan, which is sheet A 0.1. please. And focus in on the left and the middle images. Yeah, so the left-hand image is the existing, the middle one is proposed. So the project site is developed with a single unit residence and attached garage. The existing residence is non-conforming because the entire northwestern side is setback, which is the left side as we're looking at this. The entire northwestern side is set back from the property line by 3 feet 10 inches, whereas 6-foot interior setback is required by the municipal code. And the proposal is to construct an approximately 100 square foot addition to the primary bedroom. And to accommodate the addition, a modification to the northwestern interior setback is requested. And if we could go to sheet A 1.1, which is the floor, which are the floor plans. Yeah, left being existing, right being proposed. And so this would allow an approximately 19 square feet of new building footprint to encroach into the northwestern interior setback. And the encroachment would maintain the existing setback of 3 feet 10 inches from the property line. And you can see in the right-hand image, the hatched area. And that would be the portion of the addition that would be encroaching, yeah. And if you could scroll to sheet A 3.1, please, which are the elevations. And to the bottom 2 images, if you're able to zoom in a bit on those. And the modification request also includes the relocation of an existing window and 1 new window for the adjoining bathroom along the northwestern elevation. And it should be noted that the project would not qualify for the additions to non-conforming development section of the zoning ordinance because the new development would be located closer than 5 feet to the interior lot line. So it wouldn't be eligible. Generally, the purpose and intent of structural setbacks are to provide light access, air circulation, fire protection, and to physically separate buildings on adjacent lots. And staff is supportive of the requested modification because it would result in development that is generally consistent with the existing patterns of development for the neighborhood, and would also promote uniformity of improvement to the existing structures on the site. And at 1,134 square feet, the existing residence is modestly sized, and the addition would maintain the same plan as the existing exterior building wall. It would not encroach farther into the interior setback. Additionally, with a total of 19 square feet of new building footprint proposed within the interior setback, again, the additional encroachment is relatively minor. Excuse me for a moment. And furthermore, the footprint of the neighboring garage at 2828 Serena Road exhibits a similar encroachment into the adjacent southeastern interior setback. Excuse me. And so good, we're still on that elevation. The new bedroom window, which is that horizontally mounted one, would not be intrusive to neighbor privacy because again, it's of the horizontal design, and would also be positioned high above the finished floor. However, the new bathroom window, which is the next one over to the right from the horizontally mounted one, would face the neighboring residence at 2828 Serena Road. Excuse me again. Therefore, to minimize privacy intrusion, like we've applied on other similar projects, a condition is recommended to require the new bathroom window to be frosted or inoperable. The project, it was or is exempt from design review, so it didn't have to make that stop. And touching on environmental review, or CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, the prehistoric watercourse buffer archaeological sensitivity zone overlays approximately the eastern half of the project site, so not the entire site. However, only a portion of the sensitivity zone coincided with the areas proposed for new development. And this included the proposed enclosure of this existing stairwell and the easternmost footings for the proposed deck enlargement. Since the project does involve subsurface disturbance to any depth, a phase 1 archaeological resource report would generally be required. However, due to the minor scope of work and minimal ground disturbance within the archaeological sensitivity zone, the phase 1 archaeological report was waived, and a letter report confirming no archaeological resources was required. However, the standard archaeological discovery clause has been added as a condition of approval should archaeological resources be encountered during project construction. Otherwise, staff has determined that the project is categorically exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, section 15303 and 15305. And onto the recommendation with the ability to make the required findings for the interior setback modification, staff recommends that the staff hearing officer approve the project and subject to the conditions. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'll be here on the sidelines for questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Dostalek, for your thorough presentation. And now I'd like to invite you, Mr. Gorin, to follow up and let me know about your project or anything you wish to add.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Kokinda, and thanks, Mr. Dostalek, for the really good staff report and presentation. And he covered just about everything I would have gone over. I think let's leave it on this sheet for a second. In terms of the windows, the new horizontal window, I'd also add that is a bed wall in that bedroom. So Mr. Dostalek's correct that this is a high window and there's no direct views out of it. So that, and then again, there's a big piece of furniture in front of it too. So nobody's really gonna stand there and look out that window. I would like to discuss the condition about having to frost that bathroom window, and we'd really prefer not to do that. We wanna give the owner the option of putting a window covering if they want it for privacy. It is a bathroom, but on the other side of the property line from us is a driveway that goes to a garage. And I think there's some pretty significant vegetation on that property line as well. And we don't believe there are any significant privacy concerns, even with that window not being conditioned to be frosted. And we would prefer it to match aesthetically the other two windows, which are existing and which aren't frosted windows either. So we respectfully request that you reconsider that condition and not condition us to have to frost that window. I don't believe there's any significant privacy concerns, and nobody's going to be undertaking lots of activities in a bathroom or going in there to look out that window at their neighbor's driveway. It's a bathroom. So that would be my only comment and request. The rest of the findings are really well articulated in the staff report. You know, this maintains the architectural uniformity of the house, which I think is important. If that wall had to step back in the new bedroom, it would start to make that rear elevation really busy. It's already a pretty complicated elevation, and having to introduce a whole new gable on there. The 19 square feet in the setback is sort of de minimis given what's going on with the rest of the house. So those would be my comments. Please reconsider that condition on the bathroom window. It's not a deal killer for us, but we really don't think it's necessary, and we would prefer not to have to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorin. Okay, I'm going to open it up to public comment. So if you are a member of the public and you wish to speak on this issue, on this particular item, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and that indicates to us that you wish to speak. And I do not see any hands raised at the moment. Ms. Good, we hadn't received any public comment, but could you just confirm that?
No, we have not received any public correspondence submitted for this particular item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, still no hands raised, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And thank you, Mr. Gorin, and again, Mr. Dostalek, for the presentation. I wanted to ask if we could go to the floor plan. I was just curious about the bathroom window and how high is it off the ground or from like the finished floor area? Because it looks like it's in the shower, is it? Or it's kind of in the shower area. And you're muted. I'm sorry, Mr. Gorin. I don't know if you're responding, but.
Yeah, Ms. Kokinda, it is in the shower area, and it has a low sill height, maybe even a lower than I would normally like in the shower area, but It can be waterproofed adequately from the inside, and we like the aesthetics of it outside matching those other two windows in proportions.
But you don't know necessarily how low it goes. I understand aesthetically why, you know, from the side it looks nicer. Just wondering.
Yeah, it looks like,
awkwardness.
to me, it looks like it's maybe a 36-inch sill height.
Okay.
And it's the same condition as we have in the adjacent bathroom that exists.
Right. So just going through, I went out to the site and looked, you know, this is kind of, there's some similarities in that neighborhood of having non-conforming setbacks, a little bit different. This particular home is next to an area, it is next to a driveway and kind of the extension of the master bedroom addition is kind of closest to the neighboring garage. So I didn't have any issues with that, nor with the proposed horizontal window in the bedroom, given the layout of the floor plan. And like you said, there's going to be a big piece of furniture, a bed there. So it's not really, I don't have any privacy issues. The one thing I was going to condition it to be frosted because of the lowish sill height and the fact that it was in the shower. It's not so much for the residents themselves, but the neighbors and just kind of privacy. And that's really kind of so I understand you kind of want to keep it like another alternative would be to raise the sill height so it's not as low, but that doesn't necessarily achieve the aesthetic that your homeowner is looking for along that elevation. So I'm just trying to think of what else they would do for that window in order to just make their neighbors more comfortable, not necessarily themselves. So
I have an idea when you get to that point and we're talking about conditions, maybe we can discuss it then.
Well, we can go ahead and talk about it now. I'm comfortable with that. So
okay, well, I would say maybe if you would entertain a alteration to the condition to say either that it shall be frosted or the sill height shall be raised in order to maintain privacy from the new window to the neighboring property. One thing we could do is I'd like to give the client the option on these two things. It is nice when you're in a shower to have a clear window that you can look out and see the sky and have it be operable so that you can have fresh air. It's just really a nice experience. But oftentimes we'll design these with a much higher sill height so that basically if you were standing up, the sill height would come kind of to here. And if you could reword that condition to give us the option, that would probably be preferable. Changing the window on here, it doesn't require any sort of design review.
Right.
The project's exempt from that. So we really have the option to do either of those things if we wanted to. And if we could just reword that to preserve that option so the client can decide whether they prefer the frosted full height window or unfrosted higher sill height, I think that would be okay.
Okay. And I'm fine giving drafting a condition that gives your client the option to either do the frosted window as is or to do the higher sill height. And so I don't have a specific number, but I can incorporate that into the condition. So yes, I think we're generally speaking about kind of chest level, you know, something that is a more familiar window situation for a shower. I know that I've had many showers that have had that window and where it's been transparent glass, but high enough so that it's not necessarily a privacy issue.
I would say a 60-inch sill height, which is 5 feet, that's this here.
Yeah. Okay.
That's 5 feet right there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that seems that is acceptable. So I am ready to go ahead and make my findings. That oh, just one other thing in the staff report. I think there's a with the findings, it calls out the eastern interior setback modification in that first sentence. It should say northwestern, I'm pretty sure. So I can go ahead and approve the northwestern interior setback modification. I find that it generally it would result in a development that's consistent with the existing patterns of development in the neighborhood, and it's an appropriate improvement to the lot. The overall addition of the 19 square feet of new building footprint is really minor overall in that, but yet it didn't necessarily qualify for our non-conforming additions just because of the particular setback and that it's less than 5 feet. But overall, it's a minor expansion and an acceptable improvement on the lot. And overall modestly sized. So I agree with staff's recommendation in terms of the findings and how it's drafted in the staff report. And that is subject to the two conditions. One is the new bathroom window. We just discussed that the condition will be that that the owner has the option that it be frosted or that the sill height is raised to approximately 60 inches or 5 feet. In height in order to achieve that privacy with the neighboring property. And then the second condition is, as it's written in the staff report, is the unanticipated archaeological resources contractor notification. So that is my decision and the approval with conditions. And please note that my decision is appealable to the Planning Commission. In order to do so, someone would need to submit an appeal within 10 calendar days of my decision. And thank you, Mr. Gorin and Mr. Dostalik, and I appreciate it. And we can go ahead and move on to the next project.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, so next on today's agenda is 418 North Salsipuedes Street. This is a 19,597 square foot lot. It's currently developed with an 8,806 square foot Quonset hut building operating as a beverage manufacturer with an approximately 617 square foot office space and a 1,160 square foot wine tasting area. The proposed project consists of an interior tenant improvement to convert an approved industrial kitchen to a commercial kitchen. The project would maintain the existing front retail tasting area as well as the existing beverage manufacturing use and mezzanine office. With this project, the total accessory use floor area within the building would increase to 2,440 square feet. And the discretionary application required for this project is a performance standard permit for accessory uses to allow a portion of the existing building to be converted to commercial floor area. So I think we have Ms. Broadison here, and I just want to make sure that our applicant has also, who will be presenting, is it Mr. Bear will be presenting? I think okay, yeah, it looks like.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, great. So Ms. Broadison, whenever you are ready, please take us through the staff report. And we have Mr. Russell here who's managing the plans.
Good morning, Ms. Kukenda. Thank you for the introduction. As you described in detail, the proposed project consists of an interior tenant improvement to the existing Quonset hut building to convert an approved industrial kitchen to a commercial kitchen. There's no ground disturbance or increase to the building footprint proposed as part of this project. Just to give you an orientation, the project site is located in the Lower East Side neighborhood of the city. It's in the middle block of the 400 block of North Salsipuedes. You can see Mr. Russell is showing the vicinity map. Thank you. It's between East Haley and East Gutierrez Street. The project description, the 19,590 square foot lot is currently developed with an 8,806 square foot building operating as a beverage manufacturer with an approximately 617 square foot office and a 1,160 square foot wine tasting area. There's a building permit currently in review to convert 800 square feet of the beverage manufacturing area into an industrial kitchen to support a new distillery process with equipment for making and testing new infusions for the distillery and for wholesale food manufacturings like packaged sausages and packaged sauces. The application being reviewed today is a request to use the industrial kitchen as a commercial kitchen with a restaurant element by serving small plates. You could probably, Mr. Russell, show the floor plan on the next sheet, I think. This type of use, serving small plates to customers on site, constitutes an eating and drinking establishment. This type of use is only allowed as an accessory use and is limited to a maximum of 10% of the building, which would be 880 square feet. The project would still maintain the existing front retail and tasting area, as well as the beverage manufacturing use and the office. With this project, the total accessory use floor area within the building would be 2,440 square feet. The existing building already has 1,700 square feet of accessory use, which exceeds the allowable amount of accessory space for this size of a building. This was allowed in Title 28. When Title 30 came into effect, the council wanted to limit the amount of accessory space in the M1, in the MI zone, to 10% of the building size. Today's project is a request to increase the already non-conforming amount of accessory space from 1,777 to 2,441 square feet. The mechanism to request this amount of accessory space is a performance standard permit to request the commercial kitchen in connection with the existing front retail and tasting area, which is in excess of the 10% allowed in this zone. The project site is located in the MI zone. This zone is intended to provide an area for diverse range of industrial uses, including manufacturing and processing, research and development, fabrication, equipment, service yards, and wholesaling. Retail, office, and other non-residential uses may only be allowed as accessory uses to the industrial uses. Title 30 states that eating and drinking establishments and food preparation that involves retail sales are only allowed as accessory use. So as part of the new ordinance, Title 30, the additional measures were added to help preserve the industrial uses in the city. Per the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, an accessory use shall be secondary to a primary use on a lot and shall be allowed in conjunction with a principal use or building to which it relates under the same regulations. And they must be related to and serve the purpose of the primary use and shall be incidental and subordinate to the primary use. And they also are subject to the development and site regulations found in Chapter 30.140. The request today to convert the industrial kitchen to a commercial kitchen, thereby creating a restaurant with an associated tasting area, could comply with the first standard. However, staff is concerned that the proposed accessory use would no longer be incidental and subordinate to the primary use. For a building or structure or tenant space floor area of more than 3,000 square feet, as I described earlier, the amount of accessory floor area is limited to 10% of the building. In this case, with this request, the accessory floor area would be exceeding that amount of 880 square feet. Staff's primary concern with this is the amount of floor area devoted to the accessory use, which is indicative of the proposed use not being incidental or subordinate to the primary use. Staff is concerned that the commercial use will be the primary use on site and the industrial use will become the ancillary use. Once built, this change of the primary use would need to be handled through enforcement. However, the tools for enforcement may be limited if the physical layout and uses have been permitted with a performance standard permit. This would be counterproductive to the additional limitations placed on the accessory uses in the MI zone to prevent further erosion of the city's industrial businesses, which is a necessary component for a thriving city. To approve a performance standard permit, the staff hearing officer must make certain findings, which are that the proposed use is allowed with a PSP within the applicable zone, with all specific requirements for the performance standard permit. The proposed use and development will not be adverse to the public health or safety or general welfare of the community, nor material detrimental to surrounding properties. That the site is physically suitable for the type, density, intensity of use being proposed, and the total area of the site and setbacks of all facilities from the property and street lines are of sufficient magnitude in view of the character of the land and of the proposed development. As identified in this staff report, staff does not find that the proposed use accessory use floor area is appropriate. Recommended findings for denial are provided in the staff report. Should the staff hearings officer find that the proposal is supportable, the required findings are listed above. Just to go through the parking really quick, the project site is currently non-conforming to parking requirements, with 17 spaces being required and 11 spaces being provided, as shown in a table in the staff report. In general, accessory uses do not have separate parking requirement. Rather, they use the same parking rate as the primary use. However, when the floor area of the accessory use exceeds the maximum allowed, in this case, 2,440 square feet, compared to the 880, which would naturally be allowed in the ordinance, the staff hearing officer may require additional parking for the accessory use. The applicant is providing 2 additional parking spaces as part of the building permit that's currently in process. So they're providing 13 spaces versus the 11 that are existing on site. Staff is concerned that the parking provided would not be adequate for the proposed use. If the tasting area and kitchen were parked at the typical rate for an eating and drinking establishment, which is 1 space per 250 square feet, they would need 7 new parking spaces. The site already provides less than the required amount of parking. Adding a kitchen component to the tasting would likely increase the demand at the site. To discuss the project's consistency with the general plan, the project is located in the Lower East neighborhood of the city, which is developed with a mix of industrial, manufacturing, commercial, office, and automotive type surfaces. And it also has a general plan land use designation of industrial. The city supports having industrial area dedicated to industrial uses that provide vital services to the community, as well as the South Coast. And the general plan supports the narrowing range of commercial uses in the industrial area in order to protect. We want to protect the manufacturing and industrial area uses and to mitigate potential increases in land costs and the associated displacement of heavier industrial uses. Commercial and office are only allowed to be ancillary to industrial uses. Several general plan policies are discussed in the staff report. Although staff does want to support small locally owned businesses, and it could be potentially consistent with some of the general plan policies, the staff hearing officer should consider whether or not the large amount of accessory square feet is consistent on balance with the general plan policies discussed in the staff report and the required findings for the performance standard permit. Staff did an environmental analysis of the an analysis of the project and found that the project could be found exempt under 15301 of the California Environmental Quality Act. Because no exterior changes are proposed, the project is exempt from design review. So in conclusion, staff does not recommend the support of the proposed kitchen as additional accessory space in this zone because we don't find that the project would conform to the city's zoning ordinance and policies of the general plan. As stated above and discussed, as stated earlier and discussed in the staff report, one goal of the general plan is to preserve industrial uses and limit the types of uses allowed in this zone. Staff does not believe that the findings for the performance standard permit can be made by the staff hearing officer because the amount of accessory floor area would be significantly in excess of the allowed amount, which is 10%. It would be almost 30% if allowed, if this project were to go forward. And the proposed kitchen would essentially allow the tasting area to function like a restaurant. This results in making the accessory use more of a primary use of the building and not secondary or subordinate to the beverage manufacturing use. Additionally, existing parking is non-conforming, and intensifying the tasting use by selling food could exacerbate the lack of parking. If the staff hearing officer determines that the project is consistent with the goals and policies of the general plan, the required findings are listed in the staff report. This concludes staff's presentation, and we do have Eric Bear and Clay Arell to make an applicant presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Brodesson. Yes, I'd like to invite Mr. Bear and Mr. Arell to join us. I think it would be helpful if you could describe your rationale and talk through the operations. And I'm sure you're prepared to go through it, but I'm curious to hear what you'll have to say, and then I'll be opening up public comment. So please go ahead whenever you're ready.
So good morning, this is Clay Arell, architect with AB Design Studio. Eric Bear is our project manager and lead project architect on the project. He's probably going to have more intel on talking about specifics, but I just wanted to start off just at the beginning and just clarify a couple of things that were said and were not said. So first of all, when our client came to us, Mr. Cutler, he had located this building, which used to be a Telegraph Brewing location, and they've since moved out, or sorry, have folded or stopped their business. And Mr. Cutler, just for some background, is a local business owner. He started Cutler's Distillery here in Santa Barbara, in downtown, actually in the Funkstone, believe it or not, and has since grown and expanded. And it was his goal to have a location here in downtown Santa Barbara region. He did not want to relocate to Goleta. He did not want to relocate to Ventura or Carpinteria. It was very important to him that he stay in Santa Barbara. He feels connected to it, et cetera. So from that standpoint, very much consistent with what Ms. Brodesson said regarding the general plan and maintaining manufacturing uses. This property presented to us some interesting opportunities and some constraints. So first of all, it was permitted with accessory use that was over the 10% under Title 30. We started with 1,700 square feet of accessory use already on the project, and a existing non-conforming parking situation. The first thing that we did as architects and being responsible for our client is we did a planner consult before he even signed a lease or was in final negotiations on a lease term. We did a planner consult with the city of Santa Barbara. That planner consult identified a few things of concern, namely parking, which we addressed. We added 2 more parking spaces at the request and discussion through the planner consult and with the planning department. We were able to find those 2 parking spaces and create those 2 parking spaces. In addition, Ms. Brodesson mentioned that there's an application under process with the building permit. So when the staff report was completed, the staff report, that permit was in review. That permit has since been permitted. So we have, if you look at the drawing on your screen, the area in orange is now permitted through the building department as a wholesale commercial kitchen. That was the way that we could get his wholesale commercial kitchen that is a beneficial use to the actual distillery. So the distillery, the business is Cutler's Distillery. It is not Cutler's Restaurant, Bar and Lounge. It is Cutler's Distillery. And it's important that we understand that, because the food component is a portion of his business that supports A, the distillery, B, some wholesale kitchen products like sausages and things that were mentioned before, and C, some small plates in the front tasting area, which allows his business to thrive in a way that he can't otherwise do in any other location. His licenses for liquor and distillery and distribution are tied to these 3 things working together. And if they don't work together, then his business could potentially fail, and we'll have another empty manufacturing building in this area of town. That's a fact. Now, there was a lot of comments, and I want to point them out, that staff, since we've been working on this project, has had many concerns and opinions and what ifs. So there's not a lot of basis in fact. So if we want to talk about whether or not the kitchen or the food establishment is incidental or insubordinate to the actual business, then we need to look at what the actual business is. And we can't look at it based on opinion and what we think might happen. We have to actually look at it on numbers. So first and foremost, the roughly 2,400 square feet, if we want to look at insubordinate and incidental, 2,400 square feet is insubordinate and incidental to 8,800. It just is. It's smaller. It's 27%. It's not 30%. It's not 55%. It's not 51%. It's not 85%. It is incidental and it is insubordinate to the actual business use called Cutler's Distillery that is going into this building. It's actually currently in the building. So if we want to also talk about insubordinate and incidental, we should also consider revenue. So Cutler's Distillery is a revenue generating business because it manufactures and sells liquor, liquor products. I can't go down the list of them, but they're long. And he moved from an 800 square feet location into an 8,800 square foot location, not because he's serving food, but because his business has been succeeding and growing and thriving, and his distribution has increased tenfold since he started his little shop that's 800 square feet in the Funk Zone 7 or 8 years ago. So if we're going to look at revenue as a way to judge incidental or insubordinate, then the revenue generated by the distillery is far more excessive and exceeding anything that could possibly be generated by a very small tasting area serving sausages. That's a fact. That can be demonstrated with numbers and reality. So if we can take the opinion part out of it and the concern out of it and look at factual things that say, how do you define insubordinate or incidental? First, look at the square footage. Second, look at the revenue generation. And the diagram on the screen is pretty indicative that the blue area is not insubordinate to the orange area that we're adding here. So the other part that I wanted to add to this is that we have a manufacturing use and we have incidental use. This building had manufacturing use and it had a tasting room as it was Telegraph Brewery. Today, it has manufacturing use and the same exact tasting room as it had in Telegraph Brewery. The only change is we've taken some of the manufacturing use in the back and converted it to kitchen, which is also, in our theory and in our mind, a manufacturing use. And it can be justified as such because it's already permitted as a wholesale kitchen today. As we are speaking, it is permitted as a wholesale kitchen, which is considered manufacturing use. The mere fact that we want to serve some crackers and some sausage to the front tasting area and connect them with the door is the reason why we're here. Because we want to be able to have that opportunity for the success of the business of our client. And that's why we're here. Furthermore, and lastly, I'm going to end with this. The ordinance allows for this. Okay, we're not asking anybody to give us some magical variance or something, some other extraneous approval here that isn't allowed by right in the ordinance. The PSP process is designed for this exact thing. And this is a very unique situation. Carr Winery is 2 doors down. They have food trucks and food vendors that service them. They park in the street. Telegraph Brewery used to do the same thing. They created a much more dangerous situation to the general public than what this particular tenant is trying to do, which is bring it inside, allow for it to happen in a secure and easier fashion so that the street isn't cluttered. If you don't know the area down there, I do. My office is 2 blocks away. There are not a lot of food options down there. That's a problem. because there's lots of residences and there's lots of businesses. And unless you want to eat at Lido's all day or Au Juice every day, you're really limited by what is around there. So I welcome it from a neighbor's perspective, speaking as somebody who is in the area around the corner, with the idea that, hey, I might be able to go over there and have a sausage at lunch or something like that. That's a benefit. It's a community benefit. It's a community business. It's a community benefit. And the PSP process has been created to do just this thing. And that's why we're here. The only reason the staff has not supported the project is because they have concerns and judgments about what is insubordinate and what is incidental. And you can't judge those things on opinion. You can only judge those things on things that we can show you and demonstrate. A, orange versus blue. That's the first one. And B, revenue. So I'll let Eric address any of the other things. I hope you read our comment letters where we have addressed your findings and everything else, but I wanted to give you the background because those things were left out. We did our due diligence. We did our planner consult. We were told we were going to need a PSP, and that this avenue was available to us. And then our tenant went and signed a lease that he spends $15,000 a year, or I'm sorry, a month, to put his business in. And this is serious. This is a serious issue. It's a door from the wholesale kitchen into the tenant. Into the tasting area. That's all we're talking about today. Is can we have that door into the bar and that door into the green area from the orange area? If we allow that, then his business will thrive. If we don't allow that, then his business might fail and we'll have another empty Quonset hut and another opportunity for no manufacturing in this zone. That's what we're talking about. I want to get it really simple. The numbers are there. The numbers demonstrate that this is there, and the PSP process allows you to do this. And we're asking you on the behalf of our tenant, our client, who did as much due diligence, more due diligence than any other clients tend to do before they come to their architect. He did the due diligence with the city. We were given the pathway, and now we're here. And unfortunately, we don't have staff support, but we're requesting you, the staff hearing officer, to look at this critically and to understand that this is why the PSP process is here. It's to allow for these odd and unique situations that show up every once in a while. We're not creating precedents. We're not changing the laws. We're not changing the general plan. We're not changing the ordinance. We're not asking for anything that isn't already an avenue and a vehicle available to us that we were told was available to us in the planner consult process. Thank you.
And Mr. Beard, did you want to add anything or go through any of the plans?
Yeah, I'll speak briefly. I think Clay summarized well most of the talking points I plan to reiterate, but just I'll take you briefly through the plan. And this is a code analysis floor plan, but for the purpose of this presentation will suffice fine. The coloring helps, but I just wanted to elaborate a bit. So the previous tenant, Telegraph Brewery, both Planner Brodesson and Clay mentioned, had this existing tasting area in front. There's a wall. If whomever is driving can kind of wave their mouse over it. Behind that yellow bar, to the right of that yellow bar, there's a wall that runs up and down on the page. And then it kind of jogs over slightly to the right and down again, and then it jogs back to the left and then down to the bottom of the building. So that's an existing wall, and that was permitted and constructed by Telegraph. To the left of that was Telegraph's front tasting room, where they would serve beer. And to the right of that was their back of house beverage production. So we are not proposing any difference to that. To the left of that existing wall, which is to remain, will be the customer area, which is not proposed to be enlarged. There will be no ability to fit more people in here than what was already permitted, no intensification of use. As Clay mentioned, our office is just down the street. I frequent this Telegraph Brewery when it was at pretty max capacity on a regular basis after work. We're not proposing to enlarge that, which would increase intensification at all. That's proposed to remain exactly the same. To the right of that wall is the back of house, which will remain entirely back of house function with primarily the distillery function in blue, which you can see, and then this orange wholesale kitchen, which was permitted and is under construction. As Clay mentioned, the reason we're here is we're wanting to add the 2 doors in the top left corner of that orange space that would allow connection from the kitchen to the front of house to serve some of the food that they're preparing to the customers in the tasting area. It's also worth mentioning that the kitchen is a large part of the business function because it does produce ingredients and things for some of the infusions that Mr. Cutler uses in his distillation process. So it services the primary distillery use as much as it would serve the front of house customers. So with that clarified, I was just going to summarize. You have likely read our supportive letter exhibit that was included, but we had some outline summaries, some responses to the findings for the performance standard permit, which I was just going to summarize quickly here. Required finding A, these were listed in the staff report, but the proposed use is allowed with performance standard permit within the applicable zone. That is the case here. So the proposed use complies with all the stipulations listed in finding A. Finding B, the proposed use and development will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or general welfare of the community, nor materially detrimental to surrounding properties or improvements. We feel very much that our proposed project is in line with that finding, given its use is very, very consistent with what was previously permitted there. Making beverages, serving them to the front tasting area. We're adding a food component. And as Clay mentioned, Telegraph and as well as Car Winery very frequently had food trucks and other elements to bring a food component to their tasting room. We feel that our project improves the situation significantly by bringing that in-house, where it can be controlled from an environmental health standpoint and also keeping the streets clear of the food trucks. Finding C, the site is physically suitable for the type, density, intensity of use being proposed, including access and utilities. Again, what we're proposing here is very consistent with what was previously permitted. There's really no change in density or intensity of what's being proposed. Finding D, the total area of the site and setbacks of all facilities from property and street lines are sufficient magnitude in view of the character of the land and the proposed development. There's no change to the proposed building footprint or access or any of that nature, so finding D isn't really applicable. Just bear with me. And so that was it. So really it comes down to this accessory use. If the driver could go to the title sheet, the wholesale kitchen was not considered an increase to accessory use, which is why it's been permitted and approved as part of the manufacturing use. So really it comes down to the fact that if it were to serve food on site, it's considered part of the accessory use rather than the allowable manufacturing use. So that we have some area calculations on that table to the right side of what's visible here that shows the existing square footage compared to what we're proposing. So the existing accessory subtotal, which included the tasting area and offices, was 1,777 square feet, which is 20%. And that's, I think my final point is that what was previously permitted with Telegraph Brewery already broke the mold, so to speak. It was double the allowable accessory use of 10% and was approved as such and seemed to function fine for the neighborhood. We're proposing if the commercial kitchen has to be included within these calculations, which we've demonstrated on the column to the right, that increases our accessory subtotal from approximately 1,800 square feet to 2,440 square feet, which goes from 20% to 27%. So there is a slight increase in what would be constituted accessory space. 27% is still very much subordinate to the overall 8,800 square feet. So I just wanted to reiterate that, and I think that'll be my final talking point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. And Mr. Earl, I saw you unmute yourself. Did you want to add anything else before I open up to public comment?
Yeah, could we actually go to the photo page? I just wanted to show something on the photo page because we have, this is a unique part of town. Thanks, Eric. This is, yeah, if you could zoom in on context photo 4, please, Mr. Russell. This is the front of the Quonset hut, and this is a unique part of town in that this stretch of block between, this is let's see, is this Salsa Puedes or Calle Caesar? I think it's Salsa Puedes. So between Gutierrez and Haley, this one block of Salsa Puedes does not have any sidewalks on it. There's no.
I was actually surprised that the lot line, I thought that, I didn't realize it kind of started where the front of the building is. So it was a surprise to me when I saw this project the first time that parking where those cars are not on the lot actually that we're discussing.
Right. And I wanted to bring that up. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is around the parking discussion. So if you look at context photo 11, 7, 3, or what is that? 2, 1, and 2. Everybody along this one block of street has all this head-in parking it's in the public way. And so it's a unique situation. And although we cannot count these parking spaces out in front of Telegraph legally, they've always been used. I'm sorry, out in front of our project, it's no longer Telegraph. They've always been used in front. And what's also interesting is, other than Car Winery, most of the other businesses along here are shut down at 5 o'clock. So whether it's legal or illegal or legal non-conforming or just something that has happened over time, I don't know the answer, but along this block, after 5, there's additional parking that avails itself along this particular street. And there's ample street parking around the corners, which also help out because most businesses in this area, including mine, are not open past 5 or 6. And so if we're talking about the parking concern, yes, we're underparked based on the code. We're existing non-conforming if we want to speak to it properly. We've added 2 additional parking spaces. But it's hard to kind of ignore that there's a lot of ample street parking. There's these parking spaces in front of the building that were improved with an ADA space, which is actually illegal. You can see the yellow in photo 4 behind the car on the right. You can see the yellow truncated domes, which doesn't work in the current codes of things. And we're correcting that on this project. But there is, I just wanted to point it out because if Ms. Broadison mentioned that the staff hearing officer has the right to either require additional parking or review it. And as a eminently local business person who works and lives in this microcosm of town, I thought it would be useful to understand how the street functions on a day-to-day basis, because it's definitely unique from any other street south or north of here. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the Wild West on this.
It is a little bit of a Wild West. Nobody really knows how it all got created that way, but it certainly is a Wild West. And Richardson is the other street that connects Salsa Puedes to Olive. Yeah, it kind of like opposite the front of this building in context photo 4. There's a street, Richardson, that kind of pulls east-west. And that's another one of those streets that has a bunch of street parking that just showed up and, off property, off site. Unique area.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your presentation. And we'll come back. I do want to open it up to public comment right now. So if you are attending via Zoom webinar and you wish to speak on this particular item, I'd like to invite you to raise your hand using the hand icon, and I will call on you. And I see Mr. Cutler, you'll receive an unmute request. If you unmute yourself, you'll be able to speak. Oh, you just muted yourself again.
Unmute.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for letting me speak here a little bit. I just did want to introduce myself and address some of the comments that have been covered by Clay and Eric. Starting with, I am a small business owner. I'm a UCSB graduate, and this is my sole business. So this is not, I have no investors. I have no, other partners. This is, I am kind of the epitome of a small business. In doing what we're doing here, the notion has been brought forth that this would become a non-insubordinate portion of my business. And that simply is just not the fact. I am a manufacturer. I am a distilled spirits producer. The whole point of the tasting room that we have up front is to engage our clients and let them see the manufacturing process, let them engage with it. We're going to offer tours of the manufacturing facility. So it really is designed to interact with our consumers and to let them see the manufacturing process. So any notion of degradation to the concept of manufacturing, I think is incorrect. Has been brought forth. All we're really looking to do is take a commercial kitchen, which I plan to launch a lot of craft type Bloody Mary mixers and sausages and charcuteries and things, whiskey, smoked beef jerkies and things of this nature. So that is a manufacturing content. All we really want to do is be able to bring those directly up front, which has been mentioned. The food trucks that have been put on site in the past have, already made this exactly what we intend to do, is just have a tasting area with small snacks and bites. However, pre-packaging things and then selling them to a food truck and bringing that back into our consumers, which is kind of what has been done before, would add, wasteful packaging that would have to be discarded. It causes people to walk back and forth. Also, those food trucks also incur on parking issues here as well. So again, all we're really looking for is to, open a space between the commercial manufacturing kitchen and the upfront area for our clients to be able to have a little something to eat while they learn about our process and taste our spirits.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cutler. I appreciate it. I don't see any other hands raised. And Ms. Gu, would you please confirm that we didn't receive any other written correspondence for this particular item?
No, we have not received any other public correspondence on this particular item. Thank you.
Okay, can do that. All right, Mr. Russell, if you wouldn't mind going back to the plans and maybe the sheet that, I can't remember what page it was on, that has the floor plan on it, and the main floor plan. So I want to kind of start off, first of all, really appreciate staff's presentation, as well as both Mr. RL and Mr. Baer, and thank you for your comments, Mr. Cutler. Really, you make a really strong argument for what's happening here on site. I do just a couple of things. I'm so glad you said PCP, because like it was just, I was about ready, like I feel like I'm going to say it at any moment, but our PSP, our Performance Standard Permit process, we do the zoning ordinance like allows an applicant to explore this issue for certain sites where there might be uses that could be extended, and so it is an option. And I really appreciate your taking this through the planner consultation and going through all of the city's recommended processes to kind of do your due diligence before signing a lease and making things happen. My concern is that with this, what I'm looking at today is I have to be able to make those findings. So it's outlined in the zoning ordinance that for performance standard permit, that there are required findings that the staff hearing officer has to make. And on the whole, like some of them give me pause in terms of being able to confidently make them. And I just want to acknowledge there are a couple things going on. There's kind of Mr. Cutler's business, this the spirits business, the spirits manufacturing. It sounds like you just received final permit for the wholesale kitchen as kind of part of this manufacturing element to the site. which is all like, I really sympathize with kind of what you're aiming to do and kind of your business model and your overall approach to like your concept, and extremely sympathetic, and someone who would frequent an establishment like that. But what I'm looking at again goes back to being able to make required findings, and I'm having some issues with that, and I can kind of go through some of those. And you know, just to start off, looking at the accessory uses, and clearly the number one is for looking at how we address accessory uses, that it shall be related and serve the purpose of the primary use. There's no, that's very clear to me that that this particular commercial kitchen use as an accessory use would support the primary use of what's happening on site. It's the number two where it gets harder for me to be able to make that. And I know you brought up a lot of good points about the economic elements. So this has to do with the accessory uses need to be incidental or and subordinate to the primary use, which you went through the economic importance of the use. So on the whole, like I can see how the economic use would that the commercial kitchen would be subordinate, but less clear on just the intensity of site and the visitors generated happening because of that. So that is one of my bigger concerns. And then just looking at the other site regulations. So this is a non-conforming, and this is less for you, but just for members of the public who are tuning in, but it's non-conforming to parking. And so just by the sheer kind of the interest in going from a wholesale kitchen to a commercial kitchen, we look at that, there's a different use that's associated with that to more of a restaurant. And so even though it may not, you know, the intention is not necessarily a full-on restaurant and that you're describing it as being incidental, I do have concerns about generating more interest and, you know, more popularity and having an intensification and not being able to provide the parking on site. And yes, I do have, as the staff hearing officer, I could make those requirements, and just seeing that it doesn't even appear, well, maybe you could, I'd ask the question of, you know, beyond the 13 parking spots, is there any other feasible spot for parking, or was that, you've maxed it out? I'm curious to hear your response on that.
Yes, I apologize. I hate to answer a question with a question, but I have to, and I'm going to pose the question to Eric for a second on my team, because I know that we've added those 2 spaces that we see at the bottom of the screen.
Right.
And
parking, just for if you want to move your mouse over. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Russell, if you could slide it up a little bit, just so we can see a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. The question I had for my teammate, Eric, is it possible to get 1 or 2 more spaces there? I just don't know.
Yes, we've only shown 2 because that was what was required for the project through the approval process it's gone through thus far, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't add additional parallel parking spaces to the right of those 2 that have already been approved. The drive aisle between those parking spaces and that striped walkway you can see along the building is right at about the minimum that's required. I believe planning worked with us to allow a few inches of deficiency there in that drive aisle. So we would just need to confirm with planning that they'd be supportive of more parallel parking spaces to the right of there. But 2 parking spaces were the only numbers that were required so far. So that's why we've shown just those 2.
So Ms. Kukinda, just to qualify this, in our planner consultation that we went through as part of trying to justify the use here on the project, what was identified was 2 additional. So we've provided those 2 additional. We believe that if you were to condition the approval to add one or two more, that would be sufficient in adding additional parking and help us get closer. I don't know if we can get all the way there, but I think we could get closer.
Thank you. So that's kind of one of the, in terms of the accessory uses, having concerns about the intensity of use. I mean, there's clearly, with this type of operation, you start serving food and people will come. I mean, it's very, it's highly desirable. Again, I think where it's clear that Mr. Cutler has a successful business. And I do see Mr. Cutler, who's raised his hand again. I just want to make sure that that if we can promote him to a panelist, because rather than, give me just a moment, I'm going to promote Mr. Cutler. So if he would like to respond to these, he gets kicked out really quick and then he'll join us. So let's see. Mr. Cutler, are you able to hear us again?
Yes. Yeah. Can you?
Okay. Good. Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to get you into the conversation in case you needed to weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, I did want to comment that, for, a number of years, Telegraph has been operating here and they've used the front for exactly what my intention is, which is to, serve samples of what it is that we manufacture along with food. They did this via, food trucks, which were here on a regular basis. Comparatively, I think this is a far better option in terms of environmental, public safety. Having food manufactured and then transported, you've got multiple more hands handling that food. You have excess waste packaging material. You have the parking concerns that have been brought up. The food trucks and things seem to be that would be a more intensification of use than what we're proposing here. So I understand your concerns, and I just want to make clear that I see no fundamental difference between what I want to achieve here and what Telegraph Brewing has previously been doing for a better part of a decade prior to my moving into this facility.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I think that kind of goes like in discussing the accessory uses that makes, I understand kind of the rationale. I understand kind of the separation of floor, maintaining the tasting area is the same. But there's also like another, like perhaps maybe I started in the smaller one. I should have started this with the other is really looking at kind of our general plan policies and being concerned about like having reservations of being able to make the findings again, because that's what I need to be able to make in order to approve a performance standard permit. But there's a historic effort to maintain manufacturing in this area, and that when I say we, the city, and this is before my time at the city, but in the development of the new zoning ordinance, so Title 30, there were efforts to make sure that there was the preservation of manufacturing and industrial uses in the city, and not necessarily, and so the way that the ordinance was drafted in this particular zone limited certain uses and kind of capped the accessory uses. Now, again, that's it goes back to you're still able to apply for or request approval for a performance standard permit, but in researching this project and looking at the site, I'm looking at it from not just necessarily your business, Mr. Cutler, or even the previous business as Telegraph, but kind of looking at the larger zoning district in general, and thinking about kind of the intentions behind our general plan policies, which is kind of our, it really kind of maps out like what is the hope and what we want in the city in the future, and what our policies all have to look back to support. and that's where I'm having the most difficult time being able to approve this permit because I'm concerned about specifically the number B or letter B. The proposed use and development will not be adverse to the public health, safety, or general welfare of the community. And looking at the general welfare, it's really, going back to those general plan policies that are outlined in the staff report to talk about. Now, I know that we have lots of general plan policies, but specifically some of the ones that are about the preservation of the manufacturing use. And so I just want to, like, I'm ready to make my decision in terms of, but I just wanted you to kind of be clear of like how I'm looking at things, how I'm kind of thinking about different policies, and also acknowledge like your business and the kind of what you're bringing to Santa Barbara, and recognize kind of the simplicity of your ask on the whole. But just having these greater issues, having my concern. Now, I also just want to point out that I'm not able to, I've been really toiling over this, but I really can't get, even with your presentation, get to being able to approve it. So today I'm going to be denying the performance standard permit, but I also just want you to know that built into our process you have the option to appeal. And so I just want to put that out there as, that the Planning Commission would be the reviewers of that. And, as a greater body, they're looking at land use issues and could also potentially address this. So, just, I'm gonna, without dragging this out too long, I just want to, again, acknowledge in your business and what you're aiming to do. I understand just from just looking at one site and one site alone that it's like, it seems really insignificant, the ask. But when I take a step back and I'm looking at some of these general plan policies, again, that are outlined, I'm just not able to get there to make those findings. So, today, it's, I'm determining that I agree with staff's just with the assessment in the staff report that's dated January 19th, and that I'm denying the performance standard permit for this particular request. Again, because of the adverse impact to the general welfare of the community, specifically looking at the general plan policies and trying to preserve and maintain manufacturing within, and just kind of seeing what not wanting to further degrade that space that's designated for it. The general plan does protect those manufacturing uses, and as part of the adoption of the Title 30 zoning ordinance, those protections tried to go in place specifically for this zone. And so there are different distinctions between the MI zone, which is what this property is in, versus the MC, and that the overall amount of accessory space is also pretty, it's expanded. You're asking closer to 30%. Even though on the whole, if I'm looking at the blue and see the blue's much larger than the orange and the other things, but just thinking about it from a bird's eye view, that's kind of where I'm coming at it. So again, I'll be including the findings at the denial findings as addressed in the staff report, and hope that I will say that Mr. Russell, if you could show the appeal slide. I do want to say that you should please consider the possibility of appealing my decision, because I'm not the last stop. That that if you do wish to appeal, that you would need to do so within 10 calendar days, and it would be appealed to the Planning Commission. Also, just note that that a particular any one planning commissioner could look at this and pull the project if they saw fit to be able to discuss. So that is also, you know, a possibility that they could be watching right now and decide to do that and wish to discuss the matter. Because again, it's not just your business, it's really the district as a whole. And Mr. Earl, I see that you just raised your hand.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I want to just thank you for taking the time with us today. And I know we had a lot to cover. We understand that you can't make the findings that we all have presented here. I just want to let you know, we intend to appeal this project. And so if any planning commissioner members are listening to this, we do intend to appeal this to planning commission and bring it up to their level. Because in the end, it's still our opinion, and it seems seemingly factual that a kitchen is also manufacturing use. So making food either wholesale or non-wholesale, and making distillery or making beer or liquor or widgets are all making of something. And so we intend to further that venture with Planning Commission.
Absolutely understandable. Okay, well, again, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today, and I appreciate it. And we've got that appeal information up front, so please be sure if you have any questions, please let us know. And yes, and that concludes today's hearing. So I can go ahead and adjourn the meeting for January 26th. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.